What's up, ladies and gentlemen, it's Scott here and welcome back to FudgeMuppet. Today I have a new remastered build to share with you guys, and this one is far from your traditional orc warrior. This is the Shaman. After refusing to obey her power-hungry war chief, the Shaman sets out to Skyrim to fend for herself, becoming one with nature to overcome anything standing in her way. With grand goals of change for the barbaric ways of the orc community, the Shaman will prove her strength and influence to a race who value power above all else. In sync with nature, the Shaman brews mystical concoctions to hone her abilities or even render her foes paralyzed. When her prey is helpless, she strikes with the might of her venomous blade, her flame-spitting staff, and her blinding sun spells. Before we get into the build, don't forget the timestamps to help you find your way throughout the video can be found just below in the description. But with that said, let's kick things off with the Shaman's race, standing stone, and stats. The Shaman is an orc, meaning she can call upon her Berserker Rage to take half damage and deal double damage for 60 seconds once per day. Additionally, as an orc, she will receive a +5 bonus to one-handed and enchanting. Early in the game, take the Lover Stone to help you level up all of your various and diverse skills, but once that is sorted, go for either the Atronach Stone or the Steed Stone. The Atronach Stone works well alongside your Alteration spells. While Alteration allows you to boost your armor, the Atronach will boost your magic defense, allowing you to absorb 50% of spells and giving you a 50 extra points of base magicka in exchange for 50% reduced magicka regeneration. Alternatively, you can use the Steed Stone. You'll have an extra 100 carry weight, weightless armor, and no movement penalty in armor. This could be beneficial if you find yourself carrying too many ingredients, potions, and poisons. As for the stat spread, you'll want 60% into health to keep you alive in battle and 40% into magicka for all of your spellcasting. Eventually, enchanting will take care of almost all of your spellcasting, so when that happens, you can put all of your resources into health. The Shaman was born in a heavily fortified orc stronghold nestled in the Dradauk Mountains. Their positioning high above the vast plains of Hammerfell to the west was perfect for defending. There was only one practical way to scale the mountain and enter the stronghold, and that gave the Shaman's kin a bird's-eye view of any potential attacks. As a result, growing up, the Shaman was part of one of the most prosperous orc strongholds in Tamriel. They had access to Hammerfell, High Rock, and Skyrim from their place in the mountains of the Reach, and led by their ferocious chief, Gornag Gardrul, they never wanted for anything. They had well-equipped warriors, protected women, and a mounted range full of game to be hunted. As was the case with all children brought up in these strongholds, the Shaman was taught the traditional values of the Orcish people, and that included the Code of Malakath, which was drilled into her by the tribe's wise woman. She agreed with the fundamental aspects like don't kill or steal without good reason, but she didn't take kindly to the rigid class system in which the males fought each other for dominance and only the chief was allowed to marry. The idea that leadership should be determined by killing the previous leader was absurd to her. She believed it inspired barbarism and infighting between warriors who would be more successful working together. She was always more progressive than the others, valuing self-determination above assigned roles. Nevertheless, she played her part in the tribe and contributed all she could, and despite everything, she thoroughly enjoyed alchemy and felt satisfied playing the role of the healer in the tribe. On hunts and skirmishes, she would spend very little time fighting, but would wait in the wings using restoration magic to soothe their warriors' wounds, and she would collect ingredients for beneficial potions and even deadly poisons when the mood struck. Everything continued on like this for years until the Shaman reached womanhood. The question started being asked by the people of the tribe. Gornag intended to smooth out a strained relationship with a nearby stronghold by proposing a betrothal between the Shaman and the chief of the said stronghold, Marzul Gralurak. From what the Shaman had heard, Marzul had been the chief for many years, never failing to crush the ambitions of younger warriors beneath him. He was a cruel orc who ruled with an iron fist. Regardless of the rumors, the Shaman did not appreciate having no say in such a serious personal decision. On the way through the valley across the Karth River, she saw Marzul's stronghold. A dozen forsworn heads were mounted on pikes to ward off invaders, and when the gates opened for their traveling party, the Shaman swallowed her anxiety. At the feast, Marzul, a giant even by orcish standards, spoke barely a word to her. Instead, he simply sized her up, observing her physique, appraising her breasts and her hips. All the while, the Shaman forced herself to maintain a polite expression. She surprised herself even when the urge arose to spit on the foul chief, who was clearly so drunk on his power that he had forgotten his manners and how to act in front of a woman altogether. The Shaman wanted more than anything to escape. Her chief, Gornag, sat on Marzul's right, and the two of them bellowed deep laughs as they told stories of battle. To Marzul's left, his three wives sat idly, and the Shaman could see through their veiled expressions of happiness witness, they were miserable, and 2 of them bore slight discolorations of the skin tone on their cheeks. Marzul had likely beaten them, and as a healer, the shaman could see that plainly. Once again, she swallowed her disdain and waited patiently for the feast to end. She needed a way out. She could not live like this. In the next week, her tribe went on a hunt in the adjacent Geral Mountains. The shaman was soon to be married to Marzul, so it was on this quest that the shaman planned her escape. Fortune had favored her, as in the height of the mountains, their tribe was caught in the crossfire of a civil war skirmish. They were caught up in the conflict and were heavily outnumbered. Gornag took an axe wound that, to the shaman's eyes, looked potentially fatal, and despite her healing duties, the shaman offered him no help. Instead, she used this chance to escape. She ran from the fighting, and she wasn't even sure which direction she was going. When she paused to catch her breath, she heard an unfamiliar voice and turned to see a knocked bow pointed at her. Captured, she took her place in the back of an imperial wagon to await justice in Helgen. After escaping Helgen, the shaman will firstly try to make a life for herself outside of the orc strongholds. This means she will need to fend and provide for herself, but she will be grateful for the ability to champion her own fate, not simply serving the political whims of a war chief who cares not for her best interests. She will attempt to promote a change in the orc community, drawing the focus away from living in secluded strongholds and instead integrating into society. She believes that this would be the first step towards curbing the negative impression the other races have of the orcs. When she discovers her dragonborn powers, she will embrace it willingly, for any influence she could have hoped to have over the people of Skyrim will be much greater with those powers. If orcs only understand strength, she will demonstrate her strength over any orc chief in the province with her mastery of the thumb. More than anything though, the shaman will be one with nature, unlocking the secret potential of Skyrim's plants and materials for her potions and poisons. After her experiences with Gornag and Marzul, she can proudly say she is not married to any orc, but instead to the land. As for faction, she will of course follow the main storyline and subsequently the Dragonborn DLC. She will enroll in the College of Winterhold to expand her knowledge of restoration magic, but also to learn more about alteration. The Dawnguard DLC is an option for the shaman, though she will likely be siding with the Dawnguard over the Volkihar vampires. In the process of doing this questline, she can acquire sun spells to use offensively with her restoration skill. The companions are an option too, and as the shaman is heavily connected to nature, you can even keep lycanthropy if you'd like. But it won't be necessary to this build's playstyle. Any nature-themed quests, like Kind's Sacred Trials, fit her role-playing, and you could definitely look into Malakath's Daedric quest. She may not adhere to the Code of Malakath now that she is out of her stronghold, but she still reveres the patron Daedra of her race. Now we have the shaman's backstory, role-playing, and faction choices sorted. Let's take a look at how that will impact her skills, spells, perks, and her overall playstyle. The main skills for this build will be one-handed, restoration, alteration, enchanting, and alchemy. Before we get into the specific perk choices from each of those skill trees, let's take note of the spells you want to get your hands on. Ash Shell will be one of her primary spells for immobilizing enemies, and we can get this from Solstheim in the Dragonborn DLC. This spell costs less than paralysis, but you cannot damage enemies while they're trapped by the shell. Alternatively, you could also take Paralyze. Unlike Ash Shell, you can damage those under the influence of this spell, but it will cost significantly more. You won't have to worry about that very much once enchanting is fully optimized though. Ebony Flesh is the last alteration spell to take, plus all the preceding flesh spells until Ebony Flesh is available. This will give you a much needed boost to armor rating. As for restoration spells, get typical healing spells like Close Wounds and then all of the sun damage spells you can. You can use miscellaneous alteration spells if you fancy, like Detect Life, as it fits the theme quite nicely. But with that said, here are the shaman's essential perks. First up, we have one-handed, and while this is not one of the shaman's staple skills, she will always carry a dagger with her to apply her lethal poisons to. From the one-handed skill tree, take the middle branch up to Savage Strike. These basic perks will give your dagger the punch required to let your poisons take hold. When the warriors of the Orc stronghold enter battle, they are fearless and take many wounds that would kill most mortals. Fortunately for the warriors of the shaman stronghold, her restoration skill was enough to save them from even the most grievous of wounds. Now wandering alone in Skyrim, the shaman can put her talents to use for her own goals. From the restoration skill tree, go for the first and second branches, then take the fourth branch up to Adept Restoration and 2 ranks of recovery. With Necromage, your spells will be more effective against the undead, meaning your sun spells should really pack a punch when you find yourself deep in a barrow or a crypt. Alteration revolves around an understanding of physics and biology, and the shaman is in touch with the world around her, sensing the life in every living thing. It is no surprise that then she is a natural in this school of magicka. From the alteration skill tree, we suggest following the middle branch up to expert alteration, taking all ranks of magic resistance, stability, and atronach along the way. If ebony flesh gives you a boost to armor rating, magic resistance will help you out against mages. With this perk maxed, you can block 30% of the spell's effect, and with atronach you'll absorb 30% of magicka from any spell that hits you. Combined with the atronach stone, that gives you 80% spell absorption. Even the greatest mages operate off a finite amount of magicka, and truly wise mages like the Shaman will apply magical properties to her gear to keep her magicka reserves replenished. From the enchanting skill tree, we recommend taking the middle branch up to and including extra effect. Finally, we have alchemy, and this skill is one that is close to the Shaman's heart. It is fitting that a mortal so in touch with nature can use the mystical properties of Nirn's natural ingredients to make her far more deadly and far more powerful. From the alchemy skill tree, grab everything. With perks on the left side like Poisoner and Concentrated Poison, your poisons will be more potent, and with perks on the right side like Physician and Benefactor, your potions will be more effective. The most important perk here is Purity, as it removes all the negative effects from your brewed potions and all the positive effects from your created poisons. With all that taken into consideration, why don't we run you through the Shaman's playstyle in combat? The first thing you'll want to do is activate your ebony flesh and drink any potions you may have at the ready. Then use spells like Ash Shell and Paralyze to immobilize enemies who charge you. Use your staff to keep enemies at a distance and dish out plenty of fire damage. Then get into the action stabbing enemies with your poisoned dagger while they lie helpless and frozen by your paralysis. If you're not feeling particularly tactical, you can just blast and slash your way through enemies too, and don't forget to switch it up with healing spells when you need to and sun spells when you're up against the undead. As for gear, you'll want to acquire a Stormcloak officer's helmet and then Forsworn armor, gauntlets and boots. Finally, add a Bonehawk ring and a necklace to complete the aesthetic. Enchant the helmet, ring and necklace with Fortify Alchemy and Fortify Alteration. Enchant the boots with Fortify Carryweight and Frost Resistance. Enchant the gauntlets with Fortify Alchemy and Fortify Carryweight, and then the armor with Fortify Restoration and Fortify Alteration. We decided to use Fortify Carryweight as it will significantly increase the amount of ingredients you can pick up and the amount of potions and poisons you can keep on you. Your weapons of choice will be an Orcish dagger enchanted with Fiery Soul Trap and Paralyze, and the unique staff called the Eye of Melka. In order to keep these enchantments charged, make sure you get the Black Star by betraying Azura in her Daedric quest. The last thing you'll need is a hefty stash of poisons and healthy supply of potions. And there you have it, guys. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and want to see plenty more builds like this, and give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Don't forget the timestamps can be found just below in the description, along with links to all of our social media accounts. As always, thanks so much for watching, guys. I've been Scott, and I'll see you next time.